Yes, hi, hello, and welcome. We are broadcasting live from Global AIpreneurs, the premier global gateway and unified operating system for trusted AI enterprises. Right now, we are witnessing an unprecedented paradigm shift. The AI landscape is expanding exponentially, stretching across 8 plus categories and over 120 distinct technologies. Yet, this explosion has brought an unintended bottleneck. Enterprise buyers are facing severe decision paralysis, investors are swimming in unvetted noise and brilliant founders remain isolated from the cross border institutional bridges they need to scale. The results are clear capital inefficiency and deployment friction. Promoted by the Global Council for the Promotion of International Trade and the Global Council for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. Global AI Trainers was built to change the narrative. We are moving decisively past passive directories. We are a multi layer engagement engine spanning technical, operational reviews, and community rankings connecting enterprises' demand directly with trusted AI supply. Operating across our primary global hubs in India, Singapore, UAE, Saudi Arabia, the USA, the UK, Switzerland, the EU, South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria. We are bridging the gap between raw potential and institutional deployment. Today, as part of our knowledge interview series, we are chatting the future of this ecosystem, joining us as a leader who embodies exactly what it means to build with this high intent, high density, and absolute impact. Please welcome our distinguished speaker, Kushbu Mehta. Kushbu Mehta is the founder of Lumina Bridge Consulting, a UAE based advisory firm specializing in cross border business strategy, market entry, strategic partnership, and practical AI adoption across the India, UAE, Europe corridor. With extensive experience in business development, stakeholder engagement, fundraising, program management, and international collaboration. She has helped organizations bridge technology, people, and markets to create sustainable business growth. Through Lumina Bridge, she advises AI startups, technology companies, and enterprises on enterprise positioning, commercialization, responsible AI adoption, strategic partnership, and cross border expansion. Her work focuses on enabling organizations to transform technical innovation into measurable business values while building trusted relationship with enterprise customers, innovators, investors, and institutional partners. Kushbu, thank you for joining us today for helping shape the future of the global AIpreneurs.
Thank you so much, Sushma, for such a wonderful opportunity and also being so kind enough with a warm introduction. And I'm so glad to be part of this global entrepreneur, what you have built around. And I do hope that I'm able to add some value today. Perfect. So, firstly, again, like I said, that you walk us through like what you have been building around in the space of AI, and of course, what I've been doing it around. So, I'll just directly start with my presentation, where currently the theme is that I'm focusing around today is from AI tools to AI operating layer, and primarily I'm focusing more into the MSMEs B2B team and also the cross-border growth, because when we talk about AI adoption, it typically get lost into when it comes to across different markets that we operate into. So to begin with, how I structure it, we're going to walk through like four primary areas. One is I try to ensure that as much as we talk about all the theory, that because there is definitely a gap when it comes to AI adoption, but it is very important that how, for example, we can leverage through some sort of case studies or some practical example that we can integrate into the workflows, because especially when it comes to B2B enterprises or MSMEs, they really struggle when it comes to adoption, and I will tell you why that there's a struggle. And for that, how we can inculcate or integrate them into our workflows, at the same time how we can do some automation. This is something that I mentioned under the 3 to 5 year horizon, how we can go from prompting to context engineering, and then later on from automation to agents. And the third area that I focus around is scaling blueprint. Like once you have decided, okay, this is where that you want to use AI, this is where you don't want to use AI, how we can integrate the blueprint strategy. And at the end of the day, like how Lumina Bridge, my organization, is contributing towards global entrepreneurs, and what kind of opportunities and synergies that we can find under that space. So to begin with, I always ask myself, because whenever we look into the problem statement, we always try to understand why it is happening, what is actually the gap that we're solving it around. So as you could see here, as per the data here from the NASCOM, that then 94% of tech-enabled MSME say that AI can drive their growth. And I think over the last few years, what we have noticed also, or it has become evident that AI can improve efficiency and redundancy, especially in the context of MSMEs and also the B2B enterprises, if you're looking around. But why there is a gap of like only 10% are able to operationalize in AI daily workflows? Is it the talent issue? Is it the adoption? Is it the challenge of data segregation? Like, what is a basically pattern that we have been seeing in that? And from my personal experience, and also what I've seen from the basic market studies or talking to my fellow people also, most of the time, unfortunately, what we have seen is that there's a lot of momentum. Like you might do see a lot of air workshop webinars are happening on those spaces, but and this is where team test tools, but never redesign workflows around them because every MSME, every company is uniquely different when it comes to catering to those market. Of course, we have certain standard department, let's say HR, marketing, sales, but everybody has its own way of operating. So some companies have their own set of CRM tools, which also vary from, let's say, you might have Monday.com, but some organization they have Salesforce. So how do you integrate into that? So it is very important to understand that uh, the kind of workflows that you're having into that. And even if you do the or take some let's say Claude workshops or whatsoever, are you really monitoring that? Are you really asking that is it going to making a track of all of this? And after that, when I remember, like when I think few 4 years ago, because now in 2026, especially when ChatGPT started coming into our life, most of us have started with prompting. But now we have gone beyond from prompt engineering to context engineering. And this is where we have been seeing in space, for example, in Perplexity, we have spaces. In Claude, for example, we have projects. So again, those are things we have seen that because without context, you will get a generic output. And as we always say that garbage in and garbage out. And the third area that I focus around is also, and where you see the failure pattern that has often been seen is a lot of time just because it is coming from AI, we don't review that. And this is where the human in loop perspective is failing because you are having certain set of expectations when it comes to getting the data, but the output is produced, but nobody's verifying that. And one has to remember that, especially when you're dealing with generative AI, uh, typically like LLM tools, for example, Claude, Perplexity, whatsoever, this can also lead to confirmation biases because you need to understand where the data is coming from. And most of the time, we have seen that the data is coming from the Western market. But what about the people who are coming from Africa or from Asia? I mean, that's another area of angle that we need to look around from the inclusivity perspective. And of course, better tool, you can have all, like today we all having social media, but it doesn't mean that everybody knows how to leverage that to the best of our abilities. So either you can be on the creation side or you can on the consumption side. So those are the factors that I have personally seen that as when we use, for example, AI, which could also act as an enabler or transformational agent. But beyond that, it is very important to understand the context that you're operating in, or where do you need that in the first place. And that's why I have mentioned here like a couple of documents or departments that you can look around, and you can see from different contexts as well. In the next slide, of course, I'm going to walk you through like where exactly that you use it, which tool you can look around. So for example, one of the crucial department I see that is sales, for example. So here you can actually create and understand, first of all, your own set of workflows. And once you have understood your workflows, the repeatable task, you can actually create AI agents for that, which can come from the lead research perspective. So typically, of course, you need to find the leads. Once you find the leads also, you need to reach out to them. So cold calling, that we do that. And of course, you have to draft an email, you have to do a follow-up also. So all these can be tracked through these CRM updates. Once you connect with all your connectors that are out there under your LLM tools. And lately, if you're a big enterprise, they're also creating their in-house small language models as well. So those are the opportunities one can look around. In the similar fashion, if you are into HR training, so to say, then again there is a proper onboarding processes, the policy and Q&A. So you can actually create skills under Claude that you can easily create that. All you have to follow some documentation and the processes, and that's where you can actually fill the skill gap, because as you're aware that okay, these are the certain SOP that we follow under HR and training or the onboarding processes. So you just have to provide the right kind of data information, and then one can take it forward from there. And to look alike, I try to connect with certain tool to the workflow, as you could see that, into different areas. For example, market research. So I personally use Perplexity because it provides the real time, like desktop based research compared to the other players in the market. And once you have done the market research, you can actually use this data for the Claude for the market brief. And when you're doing also market brief, also here you can help or utilizing for the competitive analysis as well. So what are those industry, what are how they're competing into different markets. And if you're into especially into cross-border businesses, you can also use DeepL for the multilingual documents. So maybe the document is only in French, so I can use DeepL, which act as a translator similar to what we have for example Lingua. So they can also translate into different languages, so the language cannot be or considered as no longer as a barrier per se. In the similar fashion, if you're looking into operations and SOP, so Notion AI has actually can create the SOP extraction. And I personally use Zapier for automation again, because you just have to give the prompt, and then every Monday. So for example, what I do is for myself, let's say every Monday brief, I need to understand like the current top 10 priorities. So every Monday at 7 o'clock, I got an automation for the kind of task that I need to accomplish into that. So that's something that you can easily connect with Zapier. And all these chat GPT, Claude, for example, they have this feature. All you just have to connect with that. And later on, of course, you can use for the Claude for exception summaries. So this is where the data analysis comes into picture. And in all these processes, I, as I always advocate, as much as I also advocate for AI, it is very important that we have human in the loop processes. So definitely, especially for the repeatable workflows, because especially and the whole idea what I'm trying to do today is to start is at the very beginning of the process how you can actually make the adoption more seamless. And that's why always say that, especially in the area of research, analysis, comparison, summarization, we should always or I strongly recommend in most of the scenario to leverage AI. In the rest of the cases, you can use the human element. And when I say human element, first of all, you need to sit down, you need to think like a consultant. What is the goal, what is the context, why do we, for example, what are we here for example, if we want to generate revenue, how we are operating in the marketing space, like what are the kind of campaigns we are doing it. Is it the time issue that, for example, we're taking a lot of time building the campaigns, and if yes, is it the campaign, for example, not good enough that can build some sort of connectivity with our audience? So or and for that purpose, should we understand the sentiment analysis, that do they are the Gen Z, maybe if you're looking around, are they moving towards the positive emotion or the negative emotion? So and that's how you can create the whole set of campaign using these LM tools. So again, it is very important to understand the from the human lens, this kind of strategy, and what is success metric that you're looking into that. And the last one is the judgment. Like once you have the data and everything, you need to have certain sort of like verified lens, or questioning the data, maybe challenging the data, verify the facts, because a lot of time like it could be a crap also. So you need to ensure that the resources that you're using are very much credible enough, and it doesn't come across as a very with the generic language, and where you can apply the domain expertise. And this is where, for example, like these are just like repeatable operating patterns to again give you some insight how, for example, we have seen that in different markets that could be used in a lot of areas. So for example, if somebody is into scale up, like multilingual customer support. So nowadays, of course, we have been seeing that, especially countries like India, which has such a diverse set of people coming from different background. So how we can leverage those maybe chatbots which can cater to different languages, and that's what we have been seeing lately. In fact, personally, I've been seeing that lately, couple of like startup who are coming with the multilingual customer support. So no longer again the language is a barrier, especially in certain cities in India. Not everybody is comfortable with Hindi, or for that matter, if we talk about, let's say, Tamil or Kannada. So how, for example, or English, so how we can reduce the complexity so that people get the right access of the knowledge that they're looking for. That in the similar fashion, if I look around the consulting companies now, when you work in the consulting space, or if you're familiar with that, there's a tons of data that you have to read, you produce also. So how you can do a summary out of that, how you can make decisions out of that, and accordingly you create a follow-up email draft as well, so which actually saves 10 hours of work if you look around that. So definitely I see that there's so much of value in terms of efficiency. So all the bottom line is that ultimately we have to go beyond prompting. Great. I mean, maybe 3 years ago, it might make sense focus in the prompting, but we have to now focus on creating the workflow. And when I say workflow, you really need to sit down with yourself with pen and paper. What are the repeatable tasks? And to understand the repeatable task, you need to understand what are the tasks, for example, like how does your day to day look like when it comes to your day to day activity. Then once you analyze that, you need to understand that, okay, what are the administrative tasks, what are the tasks that that are repetitive in nature and also doesn't require much of the creativity, because it requires creativity, it doesn't require um, it doesn't require, so to say, artificial intelligence or human lens. You can easily automate that. And of course there are certain tools out there, like I said, that Zapier, make.com, for example, you can always use that as an agent. And if you want to reduce cost, then of course we have N8N. But again, you need to know a bit of like understand the technicalities, though it is relatively cheaper. And then of course we need to have operating layer to ensure that we get the right kind of data. So this is where you need to have certain set of guardrails that needs to define, so that we have the right kind of approval. It does, because at the end of the day, I always believe in that humans should make a decision, not us, not AI, sorry. So that that needs to be there. And for that, like I've given some example, like now you must be wondering how I can build those contexts, because I've been saying quite some time that okay, like we are going more away from prompt engineering to context engineering, and for that purpose, how we can build around that. So there are a couple of venues that you can look around. So number one is that if you really want to provide the context, you have to provide relevant data, files, and documents that could be useful enough. And think it like a sandbox. If you're a bit reluctant enough, so you can experiment, actually, like creating your own sandbox where you can easily experiment. Okay, if this is the information I provide, what kind of data that I am getting through that. So again, it's a bit of trial and error that you have to experiment initially, but once you get the hack of it, it becomes much more easier. Then you also need to showcase how does the success metric look like, how does the example look like, what kind of data. So you have to be very clear, and it could be as simple as that. For example, I need a data in the PPT format, I need a data in a one as a one pager in this format. And also ensuring, as a brand, you always have your own brand voice. So how do you perceive all those things? Then you need to also define certain sort of ownership also, who will review, who will act. And this is where the guardrails will come into picture, and where the resources that are out there. So for example, typically it can connect with all your Google Calendar. So if you're working in the Gmail space, so then it's easier to work around. Also the Notion, also the calendar, so it can easily track and can act as a reminder, like when is the meeting. So definitely it can take cater to most of the scenario, apart from LinkedIn. So for LinkedIn, that's another session that I can walk you through, like how you can actually work around with LinkedIn plus Claude. And then of course certain kind of checklist or criteria list, so that you verified this is a credible resource, or this is something that is not leading to confirmation biases. So those are things that one has to factor in mind. And as I mentioned, from automation to agentic ecosystem, when we're talking about that, from the lens of 3 to 5 year horizon, maybe like 2026, how I see that, like assistant insight tools, like here right now, of course we have Claude in Notion, Copilot in Word, that easily you have seen that like Microsoft can create a draft for you, or if you want to create a application for yourselves, that is right there. But what I foresee in the next couple of years, will be having this department level agents, for example for the sales agent, which we are actually started doing that. And now the UAE government is also pushing for the agentic AI for 295,000 companies. So hopefully we'll be seeing more and more agentic AI automation workflows. But considering that it's not going to happen overnight, it will take some time. So here, this is how we'll be seeing that now the sales AI agent would be qualifies the leads overnight. So you don't have to worry much about. It's all about the human side. I see that in the next couple of years that we'll be spending more time in building those connection, in building the time, like thinking out of the box and working around with AI. And that's how I see that. And maybe in the next couple of years, what we'll see that agents might be negotiating that or verifying that. But at the same time, I'm not saying that AI is going to replace us. It's more, I see that it's a very collaborative space that where we are leveraging each other's strength, because the kind of critical thinking, the problem reframing skills, the metacognition, that is something that are still taken care by us, by people like us, not can be replaced by. Yeah, that's how, I mean, I see that maybe like after a few years down the line, we'll be seeing much more changes around around the world. So coming back to that, and that's why I truly believe in the power of quotients, and also like the point of reframing those questions, like what you're looking for that. So under, when we talk about, most AI pilots fail because no one answered these 5 questions. So try to answer these first. And these are 5 things you always have to remember: workflow, context, guardrails, verification, and ownership. Like which business process is worth designing, because not everything needs to be redesigned, not everything requires AI lens. Because of course some tasks are repetitive, some tasks are information heavy, sometimes you don't have the right kind of data, so there's no point spending your time in building a workflow which can actually create more headache than actually saving your time. Then of course we already talk about the context. You need to provide the right kind of data and files, but what is the problem that you're trying to solve? So always try to apply reverse engineering. Then guardrails: what can AI do alone, what needs to human approval? Because again, that could be very messy in the long run, also scary as well, because especially in current time when we're dealing with cyber security and other future scenario. Then the fourth one is verification: how will accuracy, bias, risk, and compliance be checked? So AI output must be challenged, not just reviewed. So always create a checklist here, where you can verify, okay, if it is coming from Wikipedia, so that is not a verified resource. So you can always have certain parameters that you can always look around. Then the last one is the ownership. Now after everything that you have created, that, if who is creating that, if you build an AI agent, because a lot of time it's a human sometime tendency that you can blame, oh, this is the sales agent that has made the mistake. But somebody has to, when it comes to business, we are adults at the end of it, so we need to take some sort of ownership when it comes to the whole workflow processes, because at the end it's a technology, it's an enabler, and it can go wrong in many ways. So there has to be a pre before even we started using AI, or after like getting the result or the output from AI, there has to be some sort of ownership that needs to exist. And then what we have, and the cross-border application, as I mentioned, that since I'm into cross-border business, what Sushma also mentioned, I see that AI actually becomes a market entry multiplier, which I use in a lot many ways. Of course, like the post-meeting action plans, risk register, understand the market brief, because when you work across different industries, so how things working out in Germany and how things are working in India are very different when it comes to, recently we are getting to this EU India foreign trade agreement. So how it is going to different in terms of compliance, so to say, what is a digital product does it mean? So again, it tells you in lot many ways in terms of market entry research. And at the same time, which I always remind myself that I shouldn't forget, is that commercial judgment, like the relationship trust, because this is at the end of the day, we as human, we are exchanging the energy. So are we really adding the value, or we are just or we're just maybe creating maybe more nuisance at, because if you're not keeping in factor like the emotional intelligence or the soft skills per se, and also ensuring that we have the right kind of ethics and values in place. So at the end of the day, or the mantra, the thumb rule, you have to always remember that AI can assist the work, but it doesn't replace accountability and the ownership. And this is where the human lens will come into picture. And lastly, how Lumina Bridge contributes to global entrepreneurs. So I focus around creating adoption sprints. So that is something I've seen that because again, I've seen a lot of time you can conduct a lot of workshop, webinar, but these are very one-off activity. But if you're looking from 360-degree approach or from ecosystem-based approach, I see that there's so much of merit when you really sit down with the problem, when you really understand that, okay, these are repeatable tasks. This is where that it needs a solution. This is where it needs AI intervention. Once you decide that this is where I need an agent regarding that, and what are the, of course, the checklist or the guardrails that needs to factor in. At the same time, of course, if you already have very sense of clarity, this is what you're looking for, then you can set a fluency workshop, which I typically do for decision makers, for project leaders, to create an operating model per se. And of course, over the last couple of years, I've created my own set of playbooks. I have my own newsletter that I've been running it. So every Sunday, I share some AI insights, tips and tricks, and also from the business B2B perspective, how you can integrate AI into your workflows and make it more a seamless journey, because it's also very much part of change management, and it comes with a lot of fear and uncertainty. And last but not the least, of course, the cross-border bridge, like I said, from market research to mapping it out different markets, to also creating briefing packs as well. So that's something that is of great help. And yeah, one of the thing, like I said, that to begin with as next step, what I will strongly recommend, choose a workflow, sit down, basically 1 to 3, determine like, or closely see your activity, how do you do that, and try to connect with, is it increasing your revenue, is it reducing cost, is there any risk. So you need, in all these processes, always try to have certain questions in place, and try to see that where you currently are at. So try to rate your own performance, then load the context, gather 3 to 5 past example, your brand voice, and try to create the loop where actually AI do the 80% task. And it, to begin with, the administrative tasks are a good way to go around. And of course, you can always have the checklist, and every now and then make sure that rather than taking a quarterly gap of reviewing, every month you check, like, does it really again improve the quality, does it really save my time, money, and efforts? And if it's not, then we need to figure it out, like what is a major problem, because it shouldn't do more harm than a good. So yeah, so that's so I would say that this is the this is the last slide of the presentation. So the next competitive edge is not using AI, it is designing how AI works inside the business. So you start something with very small, because when the moment we hear the word AI adoption, it might sound very heavy. So that's why I always recommend that choose one workflow that is closest to your revenue, cost, speed, or risk. That's what we are here for. So start with something small, and then start analyzing that, and try to ensure that in all these processes the human in the loop is there. And once you have started doing that more on a recurring basis, it becomes just a practice, so to say. So that's pretty much from my side, and really appreciate, thank you for everyone who has listened this presentation for and yeah, I hope I'm able to add some value. So I'm gonna stop my sharing the screen. So
Yes. Thank you, Kushbu, for
so I
that.
hope like I'm not taking much of the time.
No, no, it's not at all. So, first of all, thank you for your insightful presentation on the perspectives of cross-border business and enterprise partnerships and AI adoption. So it gives a value to the AIpreneurs community. So I'd like to ask you a few questions to explore your experience and vision in greater depth. So shall we start now?
Sure, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah. So my first question is, many AI startups build exceptional technology but struggle to communicate their value to enterprise buyers. Based on your experience, what practical steps should founders take to translate technical capabilities into compelling business outcomes that resonate with decision makers?
That's a very poignant question that you have raised, Sushma, because a lot of time, like when you are into AI space, we typically tend to sell like AI as a service, like, take this, like, as if it's going to fix a problem. But I see that when you interact with these businesses, every business is uniquely positioned and different, and you need to understand the vision. What are they aiming for? Sometimes it's not just about reducing the time. Sometimes it's more about they're facing a bottleneck in raising funds, so maybe the sales team needs more assistance than the HR itself. Though of course everything is well connected when you operate into the business space. So I would rather spend more time not selling a as a service. I try to understand the CEO perspective, their strategic vision, so that we're not coming as a selling these LLM tools, like, or coming with AI agents as if it is some has some magical wand. So as a founder, I would rather focus into like how I can put myself into the CEO's shoes or the founder's shoes. What is the outcome that they're looking into that, and that's where I go backwards, so that I speak their language. And when I say that, so for example, what is a success metric? What are their OKR? What are their KPIs? That I would ask them first. And then accordingly, I will try to see that, okay, this is where, for example, you might need AI assistance. Or this is where you don't need that. Because also I need to understand you can have all the fancy tools and product out there, but if they have resource constraint or the budget constraint, what will you do in such scenarios, especially when we're dealing with the MSMEs, so to say? So again, there are certain factors and parameters that comes into picture, or the external variables that we have been seeing it, so that we need to also taken into consideration.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that perspective. That's a valuable insight. So, building on that, I'd like to ask to my next question. You work extensively across the India, UAE, and the Europe corridor. What are the biggest opportunities and challenges for AI startups looking to expand tech internationally, and how can they prepare themselves for successful cross-border market entry?
Again, that's a great question. I'm happy to answer that. First of all, I think one has to, like, when we work across cross-border business, you need to understand that how typically that country works. So, for example, if you think about UAE, UAE is all about speed and execution. But whereas European market, they're very much into data compliance, the privacy. So even though you have might have the great product, but you need to factor in like certain compliance, and that's why they have GDPR compliant. There are certain approvals, certification if you're looking to product also. So you need to understand the landscape. In the similar fashion, India is definitely like, of course, now I wouldn't say that we are no longer like a cheap labor force, but definitely our purchasing power has increased over the year. We have a right kind of competent, skilled workforce. But beyond that market access, you need to also understand, and especially we are way ahead in also in terms of digitalization as well. So the technology is also there, but we need to also understand that how it can cater to the needs of the data privacy as well, and the timeline as well. So it's I see that always trying to connect with the global, like the bigger vision, and then under that you try to understand or meet the expectations of the people of the AI startup that they're looking at around. Because one of the things that I've seen, that the nature work that typically works in the business model. So, for example, like the nowadays we have been seeing AI as a SaaS operating platform, which is relatively popular or common in German market. So, if an AI company who are into the similar field, they will reach out to me. I would say that this is a bit competitive space, that So they will not look for somebody who's coming from India or GC region. So again, you need to do some sort of market research, and this is where again AI can help you doing some market research, then connecting with the right kind of people from that area. So you need to understand that how different market operate and where they currently stand into that, and how you can prioritize accordingly also.
Yeah. Thank you. Those are the some valuable insights. So expanding internationally requires not only the innovation but also a strong understanding on the local markets and the partnership.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's move to on our next question. So on your presentation, you have mentioned that while AI can accelerate market research, compliance, and cross-border workflows, and critical elements such as commercial judgment, trust, and ethical responsibility must remain human-led. How can organizations strike the right balances between AI-driven efficiency and human decision making when expanding into international markets?
Again, that's a brilliant question. And if you notice in my on the presentation, I mentioned that I keep AI at the center, but pre AI, I focus on the human, and after that also. So definitely the human in the loop, because when it comes to context, of course, you can, on one hand you can feed the right kind of context and the data to these AI platform, but at the same time, because for example today I'm interacting with you, so definitely from the relationship perspective, what the client is looking for, that you try to understand from the emotion intelligence. That is something that AI at this moment, I say that maybe like a couple of years down, like I wouldn't be surprised this can be captured, which sometimes I feel scary as well. But that being said, I think it's very important that what are we trying to achieve? That's my always my question. Like, what is a success metric that we're looking into that? And when I say the human in the loop, because you need to have certain sort of human judgment that cannot be replaced. So we have to always ask ourselves that where, for example, like the things that are non-negotiable or the skill set that cannot be replaced, and under that, for example, like I said, the emotion intelligence, the human judgment, and also understanding the client needs. So for example, today when I speak with the clients, the kind of problem reframing, it's not that, because again it just flows when you try to understand the client itself. So it shouldn't get lost, or it cannot be replaced by the AI itself. Though I mentioned maybe 5 years down the line, you might see sales agent, or the clone agent maybe might be operating at least for the initial call. But again, when we talk about the higher ticket size deals, you cannot count on AI and make those decisions. So again, there are certain parameters, factors that you need to deal it around. And especially, and if I see from the cross-border perspective also, there's also, how do you build trust? That's also the question. So some economies may be comfortable talking, or dealing with AI, but countries like UAE or GC region, it drives on relationship, it drives on meeting people. Like that's how it is. Like everybody's like, okay, if you're there in town, we should catch up. So those are the scenarios that I have always seen that. So this cannot be replaced by that. Like, so how do you build trust? So some trust are built, especially countries like Germany, where you build trust through deadlines, through sense of clarity that you bring into the table, through structures. Whereas countries like UAE, you build trust through relationship and of course delivering the task. I mean, that is universally there. But again, there are certain elements that cannot be replaced as things stand by.
Yeah. That's thank you for sharing those insights. So it's an evident that while AI can significantly accelerate global expansion, but human judgment and trust remain essential for the sustainable success of the AI.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
True. You spot on, like.
Yes. So let's move to my next question. So responsible AI adoption has become a strategic priority for organizations of all sizes. How can business leaders or and SMEs embrace AI to improve productivity and decision making while ensuring governance, trust, and responsible implementation?
Again, very like it's $100 million question that you have asked. And as and this is what I try to touch upon also. I'm not able to touch much upon like the responsible adoption because it requires another session, to be honest, when you talk about, because this is where the ethics values, though I mentioned about the confirmation biases, the inclusivity, and that's why, for example, in India, nowadays we are talking about the sovereign AI at the same time, so that the data remains in within the ecosystem, so that there's no data leakage. At the same time, we also ensuring, like, I remember, like, I was actually in Delhi at India AI Impact Summit. So it's a global AI summit that has happened. So over there are a lot of localized AI startups. So for example, if you want to create, and I'm giving an example, and this is what they told me, that if there's a recipe from Punjab, right? So there are some local recipes from Punjab, and you, I mean, of course, one way that you can easily find through generic LM tools that are out there, but then to create, have that, dadi, the grandmother's recipes, the how it has been made, like there's a philosophy, there's a theory that needs to be there. So for example, like, and so I'm Punjabi, so there's a panjiri. It's a very typical like panjiri food that it's a laddu form that we typically eat during winter. So, but and that is good for energy, and it has the right source of dry fruits and whatnot. But there's a way to make that. So that's why they try to create into a very localized format, how it has been made, and try to speak in that same language. So as you have seen that, so nowadays we have been seeing multilingual custom boards also, who can
Yes.
speak multiple set of languages. So again, we are not restricting ourselves to one particular language, so that we can also have the global access. So I see that in terms of coming back to your question, when it comes to responsive use of AI, it is very important that we have in all these processes certain guardrails or certain ethics, and that's why you need to understand certain checklist. Are Is it promoting inclusivity, or is it um, leading to confirmation bias? And that's why I always look into the data, like where the data is coming from, because as I mentioned also, most of the time, or what we have seen previously, because if you talk about LLM tools or generative AI, they rely on historical information, and historical information used to come typically from West. So the Asian, the African, like, population. So there's a lack of evidence of data. So it's more about the data accuracy that you're bringing to the table, and how we can have certain mechanism or the checklist in place, so that we can at least reduce some sort of confirmation biases. But again, it's like I said, it requires altogether like 1 hour session. I can talk forever about that, but yeah, that's how I see that.
Okay. Thank you for highlighting the importance of responsible AI adoption. So that's lead us nicely for the next question. So,
Sure.
strategic partnerships often determine whether an AI company scales successfully or remains limited to pilot projects. From your experience, what qualities make partnerships truly successful, and how should startups approach enterprise collaboration?
That's again, I personally feel that when you talk about strategic partnership, I always like to understand the client needs. That's how it is, because it's not that you cannot be generic. You have to be very customized, because there's no such thing like when it comes to business, like one size fits for all.
Yes.
Even though they might be operating in the same industry, they might be operating having a similar sort of product offerings and whatnot, but the vision, like some, you need to align this, the vision, the set of values that they bring to the table. So regardless of whether it's in AI or not having AI, I always try to understand that what the client are looking for, that, and that's how you can better support them. And that's why we always say that you need to serve your clients, because serving has a deeper meaning rather than just like, acquiring the client. So I think you need to understand from the deeper perspective what the client is looking into that. And then going back to the first question that you have raised is, what are the success metric, what are they trying to achieve into that? Because AI is, again, is not and especially with MSMEs, like with a startup, they're also like having low budget also. So with this, I also try to ensure that, is it going to save tons of work, or is it going to save tons of money also? because they don't typically initially, at least if these are early startups, so if they're already struggling with money and they cannot hire that, so I have to ensure that there's a value for money what they're spending into that. And from productivity efficiency, definitely there's so many metrics I can showcase them that this is how at least to develop the trust also, that it can bring efficiency. So I think it's more about finding one workflow, repeatable task, creating a trust around that, because once it becomes successful, then it's easy to, I wouldn't say replicate, but it's easy to expand into different departments, so to say.
Yeah, that's, I think, those are the excellent points. So strong partnership can often determine whether a startup succeed to scale. It's a conclude the thing. So before
Yes.
we conclude, so I'd like to ask my final question. Global AIpreneurs aims to build a trusted ecosystem connecting AI founders, enterprises, investors, and policymakers across the globe markets. In your view, what is the single biggest gap preventing AI startups from achieving global commercial success? And how can ecosystem can global AIpreneurs help bridge the gap?
To be honest, I think as much as I see that, like, and especially when you're into the space of AI, you feel also very inspired and overwhelmed at the same time. Like everybody's doing something in AI. Like the moment you open your LinkedIn or your social media, everybody's trying to maybe sell something or those areas. But I see that, and this is where, like, when I talk about the human judgment, the human in the loop, and communities like global entrepreneurs, what they've been building is trust infrastructure. um, like this is something that I see that there is a gap, like how you can get actually access to the vetted people who knows on the ground, like this is the skill set that is required. And this is where I think I strongly believe global entrepreneurs can offer that platform, where for example you have vetted people or experts, subject matter experts across different industries, sectors, and whatnot, who can cater to the needs of these startups or MSMEs. So, because right now people also struggling with the trust issue, with the trust also. So we always look out for such reliable community where we can develop a trust. So I think you have created some an reliable ecosystem where people know, like, this is where that I can actually, or my problem can get solved. Because if I'm looking out for looking out for something, that means I am facing some sort of a challenge, and for that I need a solution. So definitely uh, it can be a safe place where I can build some meaningful connections. At the same time, it can help me as a startup owner to solve a problem or to solve a challenge.
Yes. I think that gives our audience a lot to reflect on. What an insightful and inspiring conversation with Kushbu Mehta. Thank you for sharing your expertise and practical perspectives with the global AI trainers community. So, to everyone joining us from around the world, thank you for being part of today's session. The future of artificial intelligence will be defined not only by the breakthroughs technologies, but also by the ecosystems that enable trusted collaboration, global talent, responsible innovation, and sustainable enterprise growth. If you are an AI founder, innovator, investor, an enterprise leader, or polymaker looking to become part of a trusted global AI ecosystem, we invited you to join us at Global AIpreneurs. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, keep innovative, keep collaborating, and together let's build a trusted, intelligent, and globally connected AI future. Thank you, Kushbu, for joining us today.
Thank you, Sushma, for once again this wonderful opportunity. I'm glad to be here, and as I said in the very beginning, I was able to add some value. So good luck what you've been building. So pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Kushbu. Have a great day.
Thank you.